This episode is brought to us by our friends at Wiz. Wiz is on a mission to help every organization rapidly identify and remove critical risks in their cloud environments. Purpose-built for the cloud, Wiz delivers full-stack visibility, accurate risk prioritization, and enhanced business agility. In other words, nobody beats the Wiz. Wiz connects in minutes using an agentless approach that scans both platform configurations and inside of every workload. They provide a deep assessment that goes well beyond what standalone CSPM, CWPP, and other unknowable acronym-based tools offer, and find the toxic combination of flaws that represent real risk. To learn more, visit wiz.io. That's WIZ.io. Hello and welcome to Last Week in AWS, the podcast. Let's get after it. Amazon OpenSearch service now lets you schedule service software updates during off-peak hours. Wait a second. You're telling me that until now it would just update itself randomly throughout the day, and that you're now able to give it a 10-hour range during which it'll randomly pull that stunt instead? What a piece of junk. AWS App Runner now supports HTTP to HTTPS redirects. Unfortunately, V2 API gateways do not have those redirects. So my recently relaunched last toot in AWS.com just errors out if you hit it on port 80. I've submitted it to the HSTS preload list, but that's still a pretty weak solution. Announcing the ability to enable AWS Systems Manager by default across all EC2 instances in an account. This is pretty awesome. I only really need it when something has gone horribly wrong and I want to break into a running instance, but at that point, I haven't set this up yet and am screwed. This makes that situation rarer. I've already enabled it here. New AWS Telco Network Builder. Deploy and manage telco networks. This is an interesting area of focus for AWS because I would naively assume that the cost of data transfer would make AWS a non-starter for telco workloads even before you start to worry about their inherent distrust of things that aren't in their own sprawling facilities. Developing portable AWS Lambda functions. Ugh, this resonates. I have a tool that I built in-house that I deploy to Lambda as a Docker image, but I also have to build a separate container image to run the thing locally as a web server. My kingdom for a unified entry point that accepts both Lambda payloads and browser requests. Using Porting Advisor for Graviton. This blog post feels like it's more of a README for the tool. I kind of want to try it out, but I've already migrated all of my own stuff to Graviton and didn't have any issues at all past update the occasional dependency to a newer version. Query data with DynamoDB Shell, a command line interface for Amazon DynamoDB. This is kind of neat. Usually I query DynamoDB through a desktop GUI called Dynabase that I adore, or else I ask someone good at things to query the database for me. Congratulations, buddy. You're my JSON API now. Full text search is hard. Consider TypeSense. Imagine if Algolia were open source, or OpenSearch if it didn't suck. I assure you I was skeptical as well, but I have poked around, and it actually does what it says on the tin. With a free as in puppy open source model, as well as a disturbingly low-cost cloud-hosted model that uses the exact same open source binaries that you can run yourself, this is something that I've wanted to exist for a while and can now happily report that it does. Go check it out for yourself at typesense.org, or alternately, give up on having a working search entirely and go back to your day job on the Google Docs team. As one added bonus, they're entirely self-funded. There are no VCs involved because their founders apparently don't want to talk to people whose most interesting character trait is writing checks from someone else's bank account. That's typesense.org. My thanks to them for sponsoring this podcast. AWS and Hugging Face collaborate to make generative AI more accessible and cost-efficient. What are they going to do? Turn off SageMaker and its attendant pricing dimensions and provide quick start AMIs for EC2 instead? Because that would go a long way towards solving part of it. Branch Insurance improves hiring diversity and accelerates app development using AWS AppSync. I like what Branch Insurance is doing. Their folks are great. Zero shade to them. Check them out if you haven't yet, because a purely serverless architecture for an insurance company is just wild to see. But holy hell, AWS, did you warm up before making that incredible stretch to using this AWS service will improve your hiring diversity? I feel like Pepperidge Farm here because I'm old enough to remember a time when you folks had a corporate sense of shame that would have stopped you from nonsense like this. Gain compliance insights using the open source community for AWS CloudTrail. Want to use CloudTrail Lake to query for interesting things? We have some anodyne examples, but here are ones that customers actually use in the wild. These really should be imported into the sample queries section because some of them are just amazing. And finally, the true costs of resiliency decisions. This talks entirely about the costs of not being resilient, while being remarkably silent on some of the more egregious costs you'll pay due to AWS's own pricing dimensions as you pursue resiliency. Please take care to label these cloud sales pitches in the future. And that's what happened last week in AWS. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn. Onward.